This is Mommying While Muslim, recorded live and unedited. Watch as Zeba and Uzma record their podcast, see their reactions, and find out for yourself what all the buzz is about.
This episode is brought to you by Guidance Residential, whose fall refinance special is finally here. Not only can you unlock a lower rate to save thousands of dollars over the course of your contract to own your home sooner, you can also receive $500 towards your appraisal fee. Visit Guidance Residential on Facebook or at Guidance Residential on Instagram today. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Momming While Muslim podcast. This is Uzma Jaffrey.
And this is Seba Hassan. And, we're doing our back-to-back recordings today. So I love that because I get a lot of Uzma time. But do you want to tell people, what's been going on in your week? Because I always love what's going on in the Jaffrey household.
Oh, in the Jaffrey household. It's not a Jaffrey household. Did I tell you that my son was asking...
I keep forgetting
to change
that.
His last name to Jaffrey.
That's so funny.
He was like, well, then how are people going to know that I'm your son?
Oh,
because everybody knows that I'm Abusan, but how are people going to know that I'm your son? I was like, baby, you like going to the movies, you like chocolate, and you like to talk and tell people what to do. Yeah. You are my son.
I love that. That's actually a very interesting thing. And, I was so young when I got married. And so I did end up changing my name because that was the one thing that my husband, not that my name changed very, very, very much, but
drastically,
it didn't change.
She went
at
from
all.
Hussein
to Hassan, so same thing. But I thought it was so funny the other day. Uzma actually sent me a screenshot of a conversation we were having, and I'm still Zeba Hussein in her phone, which I think
in my heart
that is phone. Just hilarious. So I thought that was so funny. So in Uzma's phone, I'm still Zeba Hussein. So my dad will be very happy about that. And speaking of name changes, my daughter has already said her husband is going to take her name, and she's like, this is what we're going to do, or my kids are at least are going to have their name. So I feel like this next generation is definitely going to be a little bit more creative with how they handle the last name situation. So I thought that was super funny that your son said that recently.
Yeah, no, I was like, there's rules to names, and names are super important in Islam. So just hang on there and don't tell your dad.
Because he's probably like, what in the world?
My husband will not be happy because he's been called Mr. Joffrey on one too many occasions. I mean, after 15 years, he's gotten used to it. But before, he used to get pretty angry. He's like, what is this? This is why I told you, change your name.
And you're like, I'm not.
Muslim, I would. So.
And you're like, I'm not doing that. So, I'm not doing that. Our week has been, pretty crazy here as well. We're still doing all of our college applications. I'm pretty sure our producer behind the scene is probably dealing with that as well. And now the rolling admissions are starting to come into our house. And I have to say, by God's grace, we're not going to name the names of the school, but we're starting to get positive affirmations for my Z1. So we're super excited about that. So he was just like, it's this kind of the sense of relief that I have some place to go. But what really touched me last night as the second of, I think, 2 that he did for rolling admissions is his sister walked in from basketball practice and we were talking about it. And he literally she said, oh my God, this is real. He's leaving, and started crying, and was, they're 2 years apart, super, super close. And he came and they were comforting each other. And as a mom, that's one of the best things you can witness, because when we're not here, my hopes is that they have each other. And that was always one of the things that I wanted to do. So that was a proud mommy moment for me, separate and apart that he happened to get into a couple of the colleges that he applied for. So that's God's blessing. But what about you?
No, I told mine, so I'm just ready for soapbox whenever you're
ready.
Oh
my gosh, I'm always ready for soapbox, and I always have to.
No, you're not.
I know. I have to actually.
You're such a Debbie Downer.
I have to brace myself for these, so I am ready. And hit us with what is our soapbox for this week.
So our soapbox for today is going international care. As we know, we talk a lot about care, and what can I say? I'm on their newsletter and their alerts, so we're always finding out about this. If you're not finding out about it online, come to our soapboxes. You'll hear all of it. So CARE is calling for the United States State Department to look into Black sites
that China is operating, holding our Uyghur Muslim brothers and sisters. Because, of course, they deny that there are any prisons. They're re-education centers. And we know from accounts of people who have been released from these quote unquote re-education centers that they are Uyghur people where the women are stripped of their Islamic garb. They are all forced to eat pork. They are not allowed to speak in their native tongue. They are not given access to religious texts because when you live in a communist government, they have certain requirements such as no religion except for whatever we approve, and no education except for what we approve. And it used to be that there were actually like Muslim schools in China where Arabic was taught, where native languages were taught, where, Islamic sciences were taught alongside whatever the national curriculum was. But in the past several years, we've been finding out about the human rights violations of the Uyghur population and the genocide that is essentially happening, where these people are kept under horrible conditions. Uyghur women have reported being raped, witnessing rape, forced sterilization. Anytime that you have that, and in our country, we know it's the same thing. We did it to Black Americans as well. Forced sterilization is a type of genocide. So the United States government is going to push China to look into it. But, I think it's a first step, but it's certainly not going to be the answer. So if you could get your state representatives and your state senators in on this and send them letters, we'll have a link in our show notes so that you can say, hey, I really want China to answer and to be accountable for this, because them saying no, that's just not enough, because we're getting the opposite reports, and you can find those on several different just even on YouTube, but also on several different sites. We'll have those in our show notes for you. Out of Care, their official statement is China is conducting a campaign of genocide against the Uyghur Muslims, and any Uyghurs sent back to that country will likely end up in concentration camps or worse. Dissidents extradited to China face brutal punishment in labor camps and prisons. So that's essentially what these re-education centers are. And if we don't get the State Department to hold China accountable, people, A, will be continued to be held in these prisons without, any freedom. And then B, anybody who ends up released, China can have them extradited. And so we're essentially sending them into the belly of the dragon. And that's not supposed to be a pun or anything like that. So back into, a bad situation is what I should say instead. Yeah. Into the belly of the beast. Thank you.
The belly of the beast.
And that's our soapbox for today.
Oh my God, it's always so depressing, but it's definitely something that we have to be aware of. And it's not something where, you put your black squares up for like a day and think that you've done something. These are problems that we have to continue to help. So yeah, contact your local representative. I actually just talked to mine about that when she was asking for money. I was like, yes, I'm happy to give you money, but are you going to what are you doing for us? And this is what we're concerned about, and let's make this happen. So I agree, and that, let's get this done. But I'm super excited to continue, as we've learned from the last week, like our Latina Muslim series, or a Latin Muslim. It could be both, which is kind of like the beauty of the language, this November. And, back in 2009, I believe Latino Muslims accounted for maybe 1% of the American Muslim population. But as of 2018, it went up to 7%, which is a statistically massive increase, and to address the needs of this growing population of Muslims, especially in our country right now. The first Spanish-speaking masjid was established in 2016 in your hometown, H-Town, Houston, Centro Islamico, seated by the nonprofit Islam in Spanish in the community. And joining us today, and we're so excited about this, from the center is Sakina Gutierrez, co-founder and COO of Islam in Spanish. She's got a background in graphic design from the Art Institute of Houston. She owns her own ad agency, runs the creative programming Islam in Spanish offers to its community, and she is just somebody we're blessed to have here today. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome, Sakina.
Oh, thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me. Walaikum
I
salam.
got to tell you that we've been trying for like 3 years
I know.
to
I'm
get Islam and
sorry about
Spanish
that.
on, but I made the mistake of not talking to a woman in the first
Oh,
place.
Okay, hello.
Right?
yeah.
Yes.
That's what
Snap,
it is.
snap.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah,
That's
what
cool.
I got was this is interesting 3 years ago, but we were just starting out at that time. But I really, really
MashaAllah.
wanted the American Muslim community to know that Islam and Spanish exists, and
Thank you.
we have the majority of our listeners is actually non-Muslim, so I
All
also
right.
want them to know that Centro Islamico exists. But we'll kick off with asking you about your mommying journey, whatever you're comfortable sharing about that, your mommy story, and then what is your mommying philosophy?
Well, thank you again for having me on your show, and I'm so glad that we finally get to have this conversation. Very important, and of course, I'm biased on that. Very important. I mean, as you mentioned, the Latino community population is growing. I mean, it's said to be at 2050, one third of the US population will be Latino. So the work that we do is really important. And I'm so glad to be able to share that. But starting with me, I guess, I'm married. I have three girls. A high schooler, a middle schooler, and a first
Wow.
grader. So I
Oh,
Oh
have,
my God. All I hear
baby.
is three different drive lines. That's
yeah,
stressing me out.
yeah, I know. It's like 2 hours in the waiting in line. It's
Crazy.
so crazy, but definitely different stages of life. Trying to balance all of them, and really being a convert. My husband and I. They are the first generation in our family to be born in Islam and raised as Muslims amongst non-Muslim family members. So, um, that's been a journey. It's been a blessing. And so, I mean, it is a balancing act. And as they get older and they start to realize that they are kind of different, then the more questions come about. And then you just have to tackle them, one day at a time. And I've always heard about the teenage years and how that's a little challenging. And I thought I had it down because when my oldest turned 13, she was still, very close to
Sweet.
me and open, sweet, and not, not any challenges there. But now she's 16 and
Yeah.
hello, teenage years.
14 to 17. So you still have a little bit of time where they're a
Yes.
little bit salty, but guess what? When they come back, they're yours forever. And that is a
Oh,
blessing.
I am praying. Sometimes I'm like, can I just close my eyes and wake up when it's all over?
That's like mommying, right? Like every time you reach a stage where you think, okay,
Yes,
I'm
I
good,
passed.
boom,
Yeah,
the kids
Something else
change, and it's like you
happens.
got to do it with it.
yeah.
You got to do it with them, and survive that stage.
The,
Zeba is a veteran, so she knows, and she's a great resource to ask about the teenagers.
oh,
So
good.
you touched on the non-Muslim families on both sides. Can you talk particularly, whatever
Hmm.
you're comfortable sharing, about your family background,
Yeah.
and then how you came to Islam, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So my parents are from Manizales, Colombia, and they migrated to America in the 70s. They got married and then they came over. And so I have an older brother and a younger brother. We were all born, first generation to be born here in Houston, Texas. So we are Texas. I'm a Texas girl, and even more proud to be from Alief because Alief is so diverse. Yeah, so we love Alief, but Alief was tough when I was in high school in the 90s.
It's not an easy place to grow up, Haley.
Yeah, but for some
I
reason
remember.
it really made us who we are, and we're all very proud Alief. We whenever we meet someone from Alief, we're like, yay! We just my brother went to unfortunately the concert,
Elsik?
no, the concert that
Oh.
happened with
Yeah.
Oh no.
yeah, but he was like, I made it through with my daughter because I was raised in Italy. Like, yeah, exactly. It's like that.
So Alief is the south side
Yeah.
for anybody who doesn't know. So Zeba understands because she's from the south side of Chicago.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
they
Exactly.
roll a little different
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got the
We're made
substance.
from a different we're made from a different breed,
You take your
okay?
earrings off
I
in
I take
Alief,
my
Yes.
earrings
Zeba.
off.
You're ready. You're ready. Oh man. But yeah, so my family's from Colombia, and so we were first generation to be born here. And then my husband, He's also from Colombia, but he came when he was 8. But we met in Alif. We actually,
Oh.
grew up together. Yes, I've known him since I was like 11. Yeah, so then family started coming after us, and so we have a large, family here in Houston, alhamdulillah. So a lot of, growing up with family and, parties, and my parents happen to be like the party house growing up.
Oh.
So yeah, so then yeah, and then now, having the kids grow up and, us being Muslim, it's very different, their upbringing than mine. So yeah. Hmm.
Well, you mentioned that you're, it sounds like perhaps you guys were childhood sweethearts or at least knew of each other when you were younger,
Hmm.
and that you're both converts or reverts, depending on
Yeah.
which terminology that you went up. How did that happen? Did you guys do that together? I'm really curious how that kind of came to be.
Yes.
Curious
So
or
we
nosy, depending on how you want to phrase it.
Yeah. Well, when you get to know the Islam and Spanish story, it's very much him and I together. So, as I mentioned, we grew up together, and when we were in high school, I mean, in college rather, we actually were boyfriend and girlfriend at that time. We just were kind of both at a different, I guess, mind space, just
Hmm.
trying to be a little bit more focused about life and what we were going to do with our future, and even just curiosity about purpose of life. And so him and I, together for about a year, we studied different religions and philosophies, and Islam, of course, it's kind of a similar story with most converts. It's like the last thing that you ever think about trying to study.
Hmm.
You think it's something for people overseas, or it's just not
Yes.
something for everybody. But we realize that it is. But until you come across it, you don't realize that. And we were actually studying Kabbalah, which is an
Hmm.
ancient Jewish
Jewish.
mysticism. And
Yeah.
yeah, and when we were studying Kabbalah, our instructor, who we studied, he's from Mexico, and Spanish, he would teach us in Spanish, and he knew Hebrew as well. And he had been to Israel, and he was very knowledgeable, and he spoke about the three monotheistic religions. And when he spoke about Islam, he said, that the Quran had never been changed, that it was the word of God, and that, the Muslims are very devout, and they were practicing. And so we were just like, okay, well, I want to study that, if because we knew
Hmm.
that, being Catholic background,
Hmm.
my family, they're all Catholic. And his family as well, except his father. Actually, he never really claimed Catholicism, and there's a whole history behind that. But he always just was like, believe in one God, and that's it. But so when our instructor spoke about Islam, we were so intrigued, and we wanted to get a hold of a Quran. And so we asked one of our friends, and he was like, "Oh, you guys speak to my mom? She's a convert." And so she actually had been a nun
Oh,
growing up. She was
wow.
a nun. She was in a convent, but that kind of didn't go the way she
She
thought,
thought
and
it was
she ended
going
up
to.
leaving. Yeah, she ended up leaving the
Yeah,
convent.
abstinence isn't what it's cracked up to be. Ask a
Yes,
Muslim.
yes. So then she went back to university, and then that's when she met her husband, who is Egyptian Muslim. They married, and after 8 years, and she always talks about how he never forced anything on her. It was just his example of him praying and just
Hmm.
fasting, and things that she really appreciated, and things that she knew was part of religion in general, her knowing the Bible so well. And she just, after 8 years, converted. So she was very well versed in the Bible as well as in the Quran. So he was like, this is who you need to talk to, not me, because he's hanging out with
Yeah.
us. So he's like,
Yeah.
I'm not the one to be talking to. I'm not exactly practicing, so let's talk
Yeah,
to my mom.
that's
So yeah,
awesome.
so
That's
she gave us
awesome.
our first Quran, and we started to read just on our own and just contemplate. And in reality, after we got a hold of the Quran, we didn't want to study anything else. We didn't go
Oh.
back to our Kabbalah class. We just focused on reading the Quran, and we would go back to her with questions. And, for me, when she explained the concept of God, and, the difference with Catholicism, thinking Jesus is part of that, Trinity. To me, it just made a lot of sense that God was one. He's above everything, and you have a direct connection to him. You don't have to go in different
Hercules.
directions
Yeah.
depending on what's going on in your life. Like, we were taught, you worship, the Virgin Mary, and then you also call out to Jesus, and then there's the Holy Spirit. And so that to me growing up was confusing whenever I was really in a space where I wanted to call out to God for guidance or direction or forgiveness or whatever. I was scared. I didn't know at that point in time who was I supposed to reach out to. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that I can just have an, you know, direct connection to my creator. And so when Islam, was presented to me, that's what it is. He's right here, right now. He hears what we're talking. I can just say, hey, this is what's going
What's
on with
up?
me. Help me, whatever. I don't have to go through these steps or these traditions, um, or even feeling like I wasn't good enough to receive, when you go to church, if you hadn't confessed all your sins, you can't receive, the
Communion.
bread and the
Yeah.
all of that. And
The
so,
sacrament, yeah.
yeah, and so I always thought like, man, that feels like everybody that's sitting means that they haven't, they're not up to date on their confession. So it's kind of like I didn't like that. So, what I liked about Islam was that there was that direct connection, and Jesus knowing that He is our example, and we do follow Him, and we do appreciate Him and everything, and the Virgin Mary and everything that she represents as a woman or someone who's trying to, follow the path of God. It was like, yeah, well, so everything that I learned and I knew and I appreciated as a Catholic, I took with me, but I just knew that now I had this direct connection. So, yeah, after about 6 months or so of studying, I started to go to a class where they taught the Quran tafsir, which is like the explanation of the Quran directly from someone who knows Arabic and who has studied, and they explain, and it was just so profound. It didn't take me long to realize that this was the path for me, and I was even like wearing hijab to class, and I wasn't Muslim yet, and I was praying with
Oh.
them. Yeah, and my husband as well. And so anyhow, he ended up going on a trip with Muslims. He wasn't Muslim yet, and when he was on that trip, he took his shahada, which he
Oh.
testified, into Islam. Excuse me. And then he called me, and he was like, "Hey, I became Muslim," and his whole story is really interesting too because he actually, in the midst of like 3,000 Muslims, there was one Colombian Muslim in there, and
Oh,
he
I
met
love
him,
That's
that.
and he's the
awesome.
one he's the one who he took shahada with. So it's just like,
Oh, that's
it's meant to
awesome.
be. It's from Allah, and
Yes.
yeah,
I just got to give props to your Kabbalah teacher.
yeah.
Like, I want his
Yes.
number because he's pretty good at promoting Islam,
I
man.
thought it was pretty just, yeah, balanced.
That's pretty dope to be
Yeah,
so objective
yeah.
and say, hey, there's this other thing they can also look
Hmm.
at because that's not something that I at least ever grew up with because the missionaries that I ever encountered were very missionary
Yeah,
and I was the mission.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, I'm
yeah,
not giving
Yes.
it up.
yeah.
So tell us about the inspiration. Thank you, first of all, for sharing that
Yeah.
conversion story. Like, we
I
always
love
love
Yeah,
it.
I
those.
just wanted to
Um,
mention, so my
yeah.
husband took shahada, and then so when he came back from his trip, I took my shahada. So we took shahada a week apart, and so we've been together ever since,
Oh,
married, and so that's why our story is so much together.
I love
Yeah,
Yeah,
that.
mashallah. You
yeah,
literally grew up
yeah,
physically, emotionally, spiritually
yeah.
together. It
In
is
Ailey.
profound. Innately. Sounds sad.
Oh man.
So tell us about how Islam in Spanish came about. What was the inspiration for that, and what exactly is Islam in Spanish?
Yeah. So, Islam in Spanish, it really was a passion project for our family. It was really something that us as a family, we felt the need to, start doing because after my husband and I became Muslim, we became Muslim 3 months before September 11th.
Oh.
And my father-in-law became Muslim right after September 11th.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, but they had our family, like, it's very normal that when you convert right away. Like your family is your first, encounter of
Oh.
questioning and everything. What is Islam? Who are Muslims? And then even more, it just really intensified that when September 11th happened. So not only are we trying to learn and grow and strengthen our faith and knowledge, we're having to simultaneously do that with our family. And in the Houston Muslim community at that time, 2001, there weren't many Latino Muslims. At least we didn't see them. We didn't know about them. There wasn't any Spanish classes, and there were no, Spanish material at that time that we could offer to our family who was asking, like, what is Islam? You would only find like a small pamphlet about the five pillars or the six pillars, of faith, and that was it. And so my father-in-law, being an intellectual, he's like, "You're telling me that the Muslims ruled Spain for almost 800 years, and there's no books in Spanish about Islam? This
Yeah.
is what is this?"
Good point.
I mean,
So
that
he's
is
like,
Good point,
spot
Dion.
"Yeah,
on.
exact. Thanks."
You're like,
And
thanks,
so
Papa, for stating the obvious.
yeah, exactly. So, so he basically encouraged us to, together, me with my graphic design skills. My husband studied multimedia and film, and he has a very powerful voice because he was an instructor. He's an agriculture engineer, and he was an instructor for the universities in Colombia much of his professional life. So he had a very, powerful voice. So we're like, okay, well, we started like our first audio project. We basically took a book, that was created from Bilal Phillips, who he made it for his non-Muslim, parents to explain Islam a little bit more past just what the five pillars. And we got permission from him to do the audiobook in Spanish. And so that's how we started. And we just continued to create audio, and then we went into creating a TV show, local TV show here in Houston. So we have over 500 audio and video shows, and alhamdulillah, this was able we were able to distribute this to Latin America. And
Wow.
many times we get letters, and when my husband travels to different countries, he'll find someone say, "Oh my God, your audios were the only thing in Spanish in the Muslim community." Like when he went to Cuba, for example, and he was like, we had like one copy, and we would like share it, and it was like the only thing we
Oh.
had to learn, our Islam or to share it with our family. And so the need really, this project came about, because of a need and our passion to want to share Islam with first and foremost our family, but also the community. At that time, as you guys know, the media is all over the Muslim community after September 11th. And there was, like I mentioned, a very, there wasn't many Latino Muslims, and so my husband started to speak in even in the media as well, and at churches, and there's just we realized there was so much work to do, and Muslims were really behind and really just sharing Islam to the world, and we're like brand new Muslims, and we're like we want to share. It's like where's the material, and there was none. So that's
Yes.
kind of how the work started. And then, we just continued, alhamdulillah, and here we are 20 years later. Yeah.
MashaAllah.
Inshallah.
MashaAllah. I
We were
love
on
that.
campus together, it turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was still in Houston when September 11th happened, and I
Okay.
was taking classes at the university. So
Yeah.
that is just, I mean, Allah brings people together for a reason. I'm just absolutely, absolutely convinced of that.
Yes.
So, is this how kind of Andalusia Arts and Media began? This
Yes.
developing all of these resources?
Yes. So we
Okay.
actually would do these projects while my husband and I were still in school. We were, so
Wow.
I was at U of H doing marketing, but then I switched my degree to graphic design. And so we went over to the Art Institute of Houston.
Yeah.
And so we were creating these projects out of there. And then we would just do it from our home. My husband had all the apps and things like that to create that. And I created the branding of Islam in Spanish, the logo, and all of the, branding of Islam in Spanish. That was fun. And then fast forward to 2009, actually, Imam Isa Parada, who is the first Latino American to graduate from Medina, he came back to Houston. He had come, and we thought, we really need to start classes. We had already started classes, but like, just expand. And the community was growing so much. And so we did our first fundraiser in 2009, and that's kind of when, we started to grow. And so with that seed money, we were able to open up the Andalucia Media Arts Center. But our idea of the Andalucia Media Arts Center was to create a studio, because that's what Islam in Spanish was, creating audio and TV shows and media to distribute, to educate the Latinos about Islam in Spanish. That was our mission. But we also wanted to be self-sustaining. If we have a studio that, the rest of the community, because we know they were still so far behind on media, and we were like, we understand the importance. We see the benefit that it has for, the Latino community, and, what the work that we're doing. I think they were still far behind in understanding, just the use of and the power of media. So we didn't have all the support that we thought we would. Alhamdulillah, I think for Muslims, if you have a masjid, then it's very clear. It's very clear.
We have a building.
Yeah. But we were like, no, we need something to educate in a way that's accessible, because not everybody's reading books and things like that. But they can pop in a CD, at least back in the day. Now everything's accessible online. But, put in a CD or watch a show, and, while they're, working or cooking or cleaning their house or whatever, and it's easy. So I think we were ahead of the game, but, everything, it is what it is.
It sounds like
I think you've talked about the challenges. I understand, because Zeba and I know the challenges of creating media, but it sounds like you get it as podcasters, like what we cry about too.
Yeah.
Why are we so behind?
Yeah, exactly. And, the concept of the open houses and all of that, I mean, it was also, it's beautiful. But it was also challenging for us. We wanted to share Islam with the world. We're on the media. We're wanting to go everywhere, and we are doing the work. We are very passionate, and as the community grew, they were coming along with us to different communities, but we weren't always allowed to. The masajid didn't open their doors to us. It's like, we're doing we're doing work that you should be doing. Just let us do it. We just need a space for 1 hour or two, and then I think just we had so much to grow, and we still do in the community, where you can't expect that a non-Muslim is going to come to an Islamic center and know the etiquettes and, the traditions of being in that space. So separating a Latino couple, that's like, you don't do that. Like, I'm saying, like, in the Latino community, like, you'll go to a baby shower together with your husband. Like, it's not like you're always together, husband and wife. You come to the masjid, and as soon as you say, no, women have to go over here, men are over there, and they're like, well, I'm leaving. Yeah. So for us, we had to do a lot of just, educating, even how to, welcome the non-Muslims, to our space. If we really want them to understand who we are, and hopefully that they will also benefit for themselves, we have to make it accessible. We have to make it welcoming. So due to all of those experiences, we realized, after the Andalusia Media Art Studio, which we did so much really great work, regardless of, the misunderstanding of what we're really doing, with the studio, we opened up the Islam Spanish Centro Islamico, which has the masjid, but it also has, the classes that we have ongoing for 20 years, and we still have our studio, but we also have a museum, which showcases much of history of Islamic Spain. which we
Oh, I
try
love
to
that.
educate a lot to bridge, kind of like the history of, Latinos and, Spain and like Muslims. So just to kind of, start a curiosity as well based on history and art and things like that. So yeah, that's where we are now. Alhamdulillah, we were able to purchase our own space because we had to move out of our rental. It was kind of like a pilot. We were trying to figure out if it was going to work because we already had our experience with Andalusia. And mashallah, our community grew. We had over 100 people, actually accepting Islam, yeah, yearly. Yeah, so, really, speaking and educating about Islam is our purpose. That's our purpose. We want people to know who we are. We want people to know what Islam offers, who Muslims are, how diverse we are. It's not about, hey, we want you to become Muslim. Of course, that's
Yeah.
if you do,
That's a
we're happy for
bonus.
Good for
you.
you.
Exactly. That's a bonus, right? But that's not really our purpose. So when you come to the center, we really want it to be like an experience for the non-Muslim, that it's welcoming, that they can come in and feel, that they're able to feel safe in a space with people that understand them because we were once them. Yeah.
I love that. And I know Uzma and I are talking about potentially doing a girls trip to Houston. I guess one of our
Yay.
stops is going to be, we're going to be with you, just so I can kind of
Yes.
see that the art and how it all comes. I'm excited about that. So, I'm just going to go back a
Perfect.
little bit because you mentioned how, you and your husband were the first generation of Muslims. You were converted, and your children are the firstborn Muslim
Yes. Yes.
children in your family, and it sounds like your father-in-law might have converted in there somewhere as well.
He
But
did.
that's a
He
whole
did.
nother podcast that will bring you guys out just to share that story because I'm always fascinated
Yeah.
by that. But how do your girls, knowing how rich the family unit is in the Latino culture, handle all their hats or their intersectionalities of being American, Latino, Muslim, in a non-Muslim family with, it sounds like you guys are pretty devout Catholics of the ones that are still that are not Muslim. How are they handling all of that, and how are they honestly accepted within your extended family?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're still learning, right? Because there is no playbook, right, for us converts on how to raise Muslim kids, right? And I feel like we almost have to customize as we go because we realize, maybe at least from observation, people who are born into some, maybe they have certain traditions. They put their kids in Quran class and this and that. And we don't catch on to that until like later. And it's like, oh, wait, I probably,
Nobody told me.
nobody told me that that's kind of like a thing, right? But,
Yeah.
and anyways, like, what you put, your kid into, what classes or whatever, that's really up to you. But what I would say was that it almost feels like the challenge of being accepted sometimes almost feels like the same with the Muslim community as it is with our non-Muslim community, with our non-Muslim families, what I'm saying. Because we as American, we are, Latino American, we are from the West. We don't have that barrier where we feel like we have to be accepted in the world. We know we belong here. We're
Yeah,
confident. We are American. We're not trying to fit in. So being
yeah,
Muslim is just presenting myself as a Muslim and a very proud and Latina, by the way. And we will say it and we will say it proudly. And that's how we present ourselves in the world. And so our children mimic that and they'll say, yeah, I'm Latina. Look, it's like, oh, where are you from? I'm
Not just
Colombian.
Latina, I'm
I'm
Colombian.
Colombian. Like my daughter's like, I'm Colombian, and everything. So with our family, they're, Latinos, that, ISPU did a study and they show that the Latino community have the lowest threshold when it comes to Islamophobia. So Latinos are very open to learning about Islam, and they are the largest demographic to embrace Islam. So our family's very open and they're curious. Sometimes like even 20 years later, it's like, oh, you can eat chicken, right? Like,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
For the
Like,
20th
phew.
year, they still trying to remember, right? It's like only pork, mommy. Okay, like it's okay.
Yeah.
you
So
know
funny.
but other than that, they embrace us. They even like my brother who's not Muslim, my little brother, actually, he became Muslim, and his wife and my mom, alhamdulillah. But my older brother, every time they have a gathering, they always make a separate dish, or they'll make a dish that doesn't include pork. Like they adapt and they
Yes.
accept us, and they feel, we're just very close like that. But my girls have had a challenge sometimes with the Muslim community, because it's like, they're very confident and they wear hijab, and then they realize they're the only ones wearing hijab
Yeah.
around the Muslim community. And then, it's like, like, oh, and then now my daughter's a teenager and she's like, I'm, 16 now, and I want
Yeah.
to present myself as a Latina. I don't want to be looked as an Arab, but
Yeah.
everybody else doesn't wear hijab. So it's like, it really depends on the stage. Like my 7-year old is like, she was in a public school for just like a couple of months, and she's like, I'm the only Muslim here. Like, what's going on? I want to go back to Islamic school. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Whereas my older one is like, I've been in Islamic school all year. Now I want to be like, I want to present myself as a Latina. I don't want to be looked at as an Arab just because I wear hijab. And I don't want to have to always say, hi, my name is Julia Fletcher and I'm Colombian. Like, just so that there's not
Yes.
like an assumption, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really as you go. We figure it out. But I think that my girls, they, alhamdulillah, they've been really, proud of their identity, both Latina and Muslim. And even just like the other day, my daughter's like, we should go to a Colombian restaurant like at least once a month and just like make it our thing because
Oh.
we are Latinos. And then it's just like, okay, girl, go ahead. They're very
Yeah.
proud. And I know that when they've been amongst other Muslim youth, they have mentioned to them like, wow, you're so proud of your culture and you're so like, confident. And my girls are just like, yeah, you should be too. Like, what's wrong? Like, we
Yeah.
should
What's wrong
we
with
should be
you?
proud of ourselves and where we come from, the diversity. It's beautiful. So, but yeah, we do live in this society, right? So it does challenge our Islamic values and things that they're being bombarded. And if your kid has a phone, girl, you better make some
Yeah.
dua.
Oh. That's why I'm like
You
avoiding the
know,
phone as
yeah.
long as possible. Like,
Right.
how many years can I get out of like forbidding the phone?
Yeah.
But Zeba, I bet a lot of that resonated with you.
Yeah, 100%. Because it was just one of those things. Because I'm also of different intersectionalities and trying to fit in, and I have the opposite problem in the sense that I wasn't necessarily as accepted in the Muslim communities as I was in the non-Muslim communities, and to this day, even as an
Yeah.
adult. And I'm like, no, I'm a Muslim, like it, and I have a very Muslim
Yeah.
name and all that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
very prideful about that. So it definitely does hit home to me, and that's why I always ask that question, because I've raised my kids similarly, where because we are such a mix of so many different ethnicities, so we don't have that Colombian or the Pakistani to fall back on, where like my kids really identify themselves as American Muslim or Muslim American. I mean, that's kind of like their two things that they've held onto, because they are so mixed genetically, that they're just like, it's too long to explain to people why we all like kind of look different. I don't want to talk about it, so I just say I'm American Muslim, and that kind of like shuts people up a little bit. So I definitely that definitely resonated with me, and I love that you shared that story, and the fact that your daughter sounds like she's a very powerful young lady in her own right, and that she's kind of telling you this is what she wants to do. That's such a blessing that she feels like she can do that. And honestly, we're gonna get gray hairs. You can cover yours with hijab. I can't. I kind of have to fill mine in with mascara. But I definitely appreciate all of what you're sharing, and you're providing these. You're kind of these trailblazing couple, a community for creating an infrastructure for other people to follow in your footsteps. So you should definitely feel super proud of yourselves for that. And I know I love knowing that you guys are there. I had a question just for people that are interested. I know you guys do some in-person and online programming, but what are some things that our listeners can kind of look forward to, or if we come on our girls trip, that we can kind of like slide back in and kind of join you? What kind of events are you guys having, if you guys are having in-person events in the next year?
Yeah. So we, because of COVID, we've, mashallah, had to kind of pivot and do a lot of our online programming, but we've always actually been online.
Yeah.
We have
Okay.
in person. Yeah, we have in per. We've always had in person, but we know the power of media, so we've always streamed, our programs that we have offline in person. But with COVID, we just kind of had to do everything online, right? And
Yeah.
then and we created a whole program called Dean Sprouts, and everything we do now. Before we opened up the Centro Islamico in 2016, all of our programming, audio, and TV shows, everything was completely in Spanish. So even our material that we distribute, it's all in Spanish. But because we opened up the Islamic Center, obviously we have just a diverse community. So we had to now create programming in English for our converts who don't speak Spanish, right? Which we have so many, mashallah. And so Dean Sprouts is a program that we created during COVID, which it's a year-long program for all of our people who do accept Islam, and they can learn foundations of their Islam, but not just like the five pillars or how to pray, but like the why, right? And how to explain
Yes.
that to your family, and
That
what
is
to
very
expect when
important.
you, yeah, and what to expect when you start to integrate. We do come out of COVID, and you start to integrate into the general Muslim community. You're going to see a lot of stuff that you probably didn't learn in the Quran or the Sunnah. So we
Yes.
want to give them,
Pre and post COVID.
yes, yeah, exactly. So, just what's the difference between culture and Islam? Just things that are, as converts, you will run into. So it's a really nice program. We have it both in English and Spanish. And so now, after Ramadan this year, we actually started slowly going into in person. And a lot of our very successful social programs are like, for example, tomorrow we have a family appreciation dinner, which we do specifically for our non-Muslim family. We invite them
Oh,
to
I
come
love
and
that.
have dinner. Yeah. So, for example, one year I invited my father, who's not Muslim, and just to thank him for being there for me, for accepting me, for understanding, and then just like the floodgates of tears start opening up,
I
and
know.
everybody starts saying, "Oh my God, I've never told you, but I'm so proud of you. You've become a better daughter to me, or a better,
Oh.
son, or whatever." So it's a really great opportunity for our convert brothers and sisters to thank their family, because they too go through a lot when we convert. It's not just us.
Yes.
They go through so much, and we understand that now that we've been in Islam 20 years. We totally are looking at both sides of what's going on, the family and everything that they have to kind of accept, because it's such something. It seems like it's so different, especially for like, for example, my mom looking at me and my appearance. It's like I wore hijab right away. She's like, whoa, like I'm cool with you accepting
You gotta
Islam, but why
walk
you
me
gotta,
step by step,
yeah,
baby.
it's like, why you gotta change the whole thing? And she thought I wanted to be Arab, and it's like, no, I'm such a proud Colombian. I taught my kids Spanish and everything. So it's just getting them to understand that. So programs like that we have support groups for our sisters, for our teens, all of our kids that are being raised in Islam. We need that support structure because, like I said,
Yeah.
there is no playbook for them. There's no playbook for us. And some of us come into Islam with children. So it's also like, how do they're 10, and now all of a sudden we're not, like building our, like, decorating our Christmas tree anymore. It's like, how do
Yeah.
you, so it's just so much that the convert needs, different aspects of their life that as they begin to learn and adapt to their life and change, they need that support. So we have a lot of social programs, like I said, for the sisters. It's called Crowns of Modesty. We have one for our seniors, our teens. Every month we have a potluck called convivencia, which it's a term used in Spain. It's coexistence. This is really intentional to also bring our non-Muslim family to come and see and observe the Muslim community, because they might think I'm the only crazy Latina to become Muslim, but when they come to our potluck, they're gonna see all of these, like, a bunch of crazy Latinos. Oh, you're not the only one who was convinced, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they see the diversity in our food, and everybody speaking Spanish and welcoming just as much as we would be in any setting. The Latino culture is very welcoming and, loving, and we like to joke around, and we're colorful. And so we want to give that experience to our non-Muslim family and Muslims. We've been kind of there to bridge that understanding between the Muslims and the Latino culture too, because there's a lot to learn as well, and I think it's important that we all get to know each other, especially with the Latino community growing so much. We need to all kind of understand who we are to be able to accept one another, to live together, um, you know, in a positive future, and Bismillah, our kids.
Coexist.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, coexist, convivencia.
I love that. It sounds
Exactly.
like some native-born Muslims could benefit from some of your programming as well.
They
So,
do.
Yeah.
Zeba, a lot of my friends in Houston who are born Muslim go to Centro Islamico.
Yeah,
They don't
they
go to
do.
that's
the
amazing.
100+ masajid that we have that are not in Spanish.
I love
Yeah.
that.
They would prefer to go there.
I
Yeah.
love
Because
that.
of the environment I think y'all have created, Sakina. So
Thank you.
congratulations to you guys. And I'm having some serious FOMO
I
right now.
know,
I'm
me
missing
too. I was
really,
like,
really badly.
to keep going with our theme of the girls' trip in Houston, invite us to one of those dinners so that we can taste
Yes.
all of that food. Because I
Oh.
am sitting here.
I want to go to the family
starving.
appreciation potluck because I want
Yes.
to cry.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my
so
God.
I want to
great.
cry with
I
everybody.
love it. I
Yeah,
love
I
it.
can't wait.
That's
That's
beautiful.
tomorrow.
So-
We're so
Yeah.
excited.
Yay! So we'll look for pictures for that. Hopefully, we'll check you guys out. Our links are going to be in our show notes for
In the show
everything,
notes.
and we're super excited about that. I always end. We're going to put a minute on the timer, and we do a rapid fire where I kind of like throw some questions at you, Sakina, and then you usually have to
Okay.
answer right away.
Oh, gosh.
So it's scary. You never know what I'm going to ask, but it's always the first one is, what is your favorite book, or what are you currently reading?
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh my gosh. I have
That
so
always
many on
stump.
my,
I know that always stumps
right?
people.
It's like I have like 4 on my
I'm just
thing,
not
and I
good at
don't.
remembering book titles.
Yeah, exactly.
The one with
But
the
mine is so it's Marie Forleo. She has, I don't know if you guys heard of her, but she's amazing. She gives a lot of great tips on business women and people trying to start. So we have our own business. So I'm always trying to understand from a woman's perspective, how to be a leader and whatnot. So yes. Everything is
that
gosh, what is it? Everything is doable or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Marie Forleo.
We'll look it up.
We'll look it up, and
Forleo.
we'll put that in the show notes. If you were
Yes.
to eat, because we keep talking about food, and obviously I'm hungry because I've only had a half a yogurt for this entire day. If you could eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
One meal. Wow. Bismillah. It's definitely Colombian dish. Okay. And I'm
Okay.
just trying to pick one of them that I grew up on. Probably sancocho. Sancocho is a really famous soup. It's a beef, like a beef stew kind of, but it's, soup, potatoes, plátano, yuca. It's very delicious on a day that you just need a pick me up. Yeah, get some
I
sancocho.
love that. And then now we're
Good
going to look up
comfort
that
food.
recipe because that sounds like a good
I
comfort
know.
food. If you could
Yeah.
go back in time and tell your 18-year-old self something that could teach her where you are, obviously you were on your own personal spiritual journey, what would that piece of advice be?
Um, I think that I would say you're doing good and to keep following your intuition. Because I think that, I was raised really well. My parents were always very open-minded and accepting, and that really made me who I am. And I really just kind of followed my intuition and, stay connected to God, even though I felt confused at times, and now I'm not. Thank God. And because I took that step, now I have that connection with God. So I feel complete. So I think that I would say you're doing good, sis. Yeah.
I love that. Again, keep doing what you're
That's
doing.
the best answer ever.
Yeah, and keep doing what you're doing.
Like at 18, nobody wanted to tell me to keep doing what you're doing. I was so stupid. So stupid.
Yeah.
Still learning.
Yeah.
Well,
I love it. Thank you so much, Sakina. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say thank
Thanks,
you so much
guys.
for joining us. And it's funny because before we started recording, I was like, "How do you say Islam in Spanish?" And we were all just kind of like, "Islam, Dumbo," or "bozo," which is like this new thing. I was like, "Oh, I've always wanted to know." There's no accent. You say Islam. So I learned something new, and I'm definitely going to be checking you out. So thank you so much, Sakina, for joining us here today.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate you. And thank you for all the wonderful work that you guys are doing. And I hope to see y'all on the girls' trip. Call me up.
No, now we're going to look you up because we're annoying like that. And when we say we're coming, we'll like really show up.
She literally does.
Like,
I
wait,
love
you're
it.
really
You're
coming?
actually coming, like,
Yeah.
and then people turn off their lights and they're like, "Oh, we didn't think you were going to actually
and then they
do
don't
that."
answer the phone. Like, no, I'm here.
Oh, that's messed up.
Sometimes I'll show up to an event a week early before you invited me because I'm that scattered. But I just remembered something when Tio said, "Oh, what happened? Like, the Moors ruled Spain for so many years, but the Spanish Inquisition happened. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those Arabic texts were burned.
Yeah, for sure.
When Spain got retaken, and I think rightly so.
Yeah.
No more colonialism in Spain.
Yeah.
That wasn't needed either. But we lost a lot of those texts, and I'm so glad that you are spearheading bringing it back and giving it to our community. Because to be honest, I've only ever seen the Quran in Spanish, but like all the other texts that we need in order to justify what we do and our practice of our faith, I think that that's really important, and that you're bringing that to everybody.
Yeah.
Props to you. Thank you so much for your
much.
work.
All right, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Assalamu
alaikum. Take care.
This episode is brought to you by Guidance Residential, whose fall refinance special is finally here. Not only can you unlock a lower rate to save thousands of dollars over the course of your contract to own your home sooner, you can also receive $500 towards your appraisal fee. Visit Guidance Residential on Facebook or at Guidance Residential on Instagram today.